What is going on, Jet fans? Matt O'Leary back with another video. In today's video, I want to cover two topics. One, Sauce Gardner went on a podcast and discussed how his role will be changing in 2024, something Jet fans will be excited about. And Joe Douglas, more from his press conference yesterday, revealing a draft ideology. We'll break it all down. So Sauce Gardner appeared on The Shop, a very popular podcast series, and on this episode, he talked about something that Jet fans are going to love to hear. What's the biggest thing that Jet fans say about Sauce Gardner? Why doesn't he travel? Why doesn't he follow the number one receivers on opposing teams? And apparently, that's going to change. Here's the quote: "Everybody gets tired, but I want to travel. I'm going to be traveling this year, so stay tuned for that. I already talked to my defensive coordinator about it." Let's clap it up for Sauce Gardner, Robert Saleh, and obviously Jeff Ulbrich, the defensive coordinator, for coming to this conclusion, because Sauce Gardner, as we know, is one of the best corners, if not the best cornerback in all of football. And oftentimes they use zone, number one, but number two, they keep DJ Reed on one side of the field and Sauce Gardner on one side of the field, and they don't really flip-flop them. But while that has worked, I think this defense could go to an entirely different level if they travel Sauce Gardner like the New York Jets used to do with Darrelle Revis. So how has Sauce done in man coverage? Well, last year, and his first year, but let's just look at last year, unreal. He allowed just 35.3% of passes going his way to be received. So it's a 35.3 reception percentage. 6 catches for 75 yards on an entire season. One more time, 6 catches, 75. Now, if that happened in a game, it'd be like, okay, yeah, he struggled that game. But in man coverage, 6 catches, 75 yards, no touchdowns, and a 49.9 passer rating allowed. That is unbelievable. Absolutely unbelievable stuff for Sauce Gardner. Now, I like DJ Reed a ton. I think he is one of the better number 2 corners in the NFL. But if you think about one game in particular where he struggled, and the Jets probably could have used someone to shadow, it was against the Miami Dolphins last year down in Miami. A big play happened, and it was DJ Reed who allowed it. And again, I don't want this to come off as me like, giving the business to DJ Reed. That's not the case. I think he's great. I think he's a top 15 corner in the NFL. I think he's one of the best number 2 corners in the NFL. But I want to see Sauce Gardner on opposing teams' number 1 wide receivers. I think this is a wise decision. Now, something else that really a thought that sparked from this is, are the Jets preparing for life after DJ Reed? I like Reed. I'd be open to giving him an extension, but if the Jets think that they could just go one more, Reed has one more year left on his contract, and they could find a number 2 corner that could be successful in this system, and they end up letting DJ Reed walk at the end of the year. Maybe this is the start of prepping for life after DJ Reed, because, DJ's been here the last 2 seasons. The Jets defense has been absolutely stellar. This has been the best cornerback trio, if you include Michael Carter in the slot, over the last 3 seasons. So maybe they say, we can't sign both Michael Carter and DJ Reed, so we're going to choose Michael Carter, the slot corner, and we're going to find a number 2 corner either cheaper in free agency than what DJ Reed would be, or through the NFL draft, and have him on a cheap deal as Sauce Gardner cashes in on a second contract in the next year or so. Just something to think about, but again, that's something that I know just about every single Jets fan I talk to, they're like, I love this Jets defense, but why doesn't Sauce Gardner travel? And I don't have a good answer for it. It's, while they're very stubborn, it has a negative connotation, so I don't want to use stubborn, but they're very ritual. There you go. In their ways, they like to have corners just have a side, and they stick to what works. And more often than not, it does work. But as I said in this video already, I think this could take the defense to a completely another level. Okay, so the second thing that I want to get into today, Joe Douglas talked yesterday. We did a big video on it, breaking down the biggest talking points from it. But something that flew a little bit under the radar was Joe Douglas, when talking about the depth on this team and whether or not the first round pick, a potential 10th overall pick, would have to come in and play right away. Let's roll the clip.
No, I think it's a positive thing if you have enough depth on your team so that a draft pick doesn't have to come in and play right away. I would say that just about anyone we draft, it's going to be a dogfight to break into the starting lineup. So I think there's a lot of good players. I mean, even warriors like Conk and Ruck. I mean, they're not going to go quietly into the night if we took a tight end. So we have. It's going to be tough for anyone we draft to come in and just stake their claim for a starting spot.
Interesting. So he talks about the state of the roster being in a place where the 10th overall pick doesn't necessarily have to come in and play. And that's a good problem to have. He's not exactly wrong in that sense, because that shows that you have a really good roster and that you can go multiple different directions. I would like to see the Jets' first-round pick play at least more than what Will McDonald played last season for them. That was a little bit of a, I don't know if red flag. And, Will McDonald might end up being a very nice player in this league, but just it was a strange pick at the time and didn't play a whole lot last year. We'll see if his role increases this season. But I think this quote led many to believe, okay, well, maybe it is going to be an offensive lineman, which I think should be something that's considered because, again, Tyron Smith, Morgan Moses, and Elijah Vera Tucker, all three of those guys have legit injury concern going into this season. So while on paper the Jets starting five on their offensive line is really good, the chances of the starting five playing all 17 games really slim. And it's going to be dependent on how much they like Carter Warren, how they believe someone like Max Mitchell is coming along. They could just sign a David Bakhtiari in free agency for another Band-Aid fix if they wanted to do that. And specifically at the end of the clip, Joe Douglas talked about tight end. And it's like, if we drafted a tight end, you're not going to see, Tyler Conklin or Jeremy Ruckert go quietly into the night. And he's right. I don't think him mentioning tight end takes that out of the picture and be like, oh, that's a smokescreen. He wouldn't say tight end if they were really actually considering tight end. I do think they are considering Brock Bowers. It wouldn't shock me on draft night if they, read the card and it was Brock Bowers to the New York Jets at pick 10. It wouldn't, honestly. If they went wide receiver, offensive tackle, or tight end, you're not going to get a shocked reaction out of me in the slightest. Now, if they go Dallas Turner at pick 10, I'm going to be upset. I'm going to be shocked. If they go Cooper DeJean at pick 10 or a corner, then yeah, that's going to be a little bit upsetting. That's for damn sure. But if they go offensive line, tight end and Brock Bowers, or wide receiver, I don't think anyone should be surprised. I really don't, because as I've said for weeks now, I think you can make a strong case for either one of those options. And that's the biggest thing that I've been trying to get through to Jet fans over the last month or so. We could have our preferences. You could say, hey, my preference is Brock Bowers, and I can respect that. Or, hey, my preference is wide receiver because I don't trust Mike Williams coming off the injury. Okay, I get you. Sure. Or you could say my preference is offensive line because you don't have long-term answers and there's going to be injuries. I'll say, okay, I get it. Absolutely. But one thing we can't do or shouldn't do, because I still see it, it's unfortunate that it happens, we shouldn't be at each other's throat over someone having a differing opinion, and an opinion that can make sense. It can make sense to go tight end. It can make sense to go wide receiver, offensive line. We'll see how it plays out, but Joe Douglas kind of giving a little, that guy doesn't necessarily have to play right away. Makes you think. Just makes you think. Adds another wrinkle into this. Again, less than a week out from the NFL draft. Exciting stuff. I'm Matt O'Leary. Please make sure to subscribe before you go, and I'll catch you next time.